Welcome to our Art of the Americas test review. Since Art of the Indigenous Americas barely featured on earlier AP exams except on the essays, I've had to scramble a little to find questions. So I've stuck in some of the quiz questions. All of the quizzes will be open for a second attempt over the weekend so you can review. And of course, the matching questions will show up as well, and these, as always, are open for unlimited attempts. Your Unit 11 test will have one short essay, an actual College Board essay, which I will grade using the College Board rubric. It will be timed at 15 minutes, which is the time allotted or suggested on the test. Here are the works that the essay covers, and the subject is the presentation of time and how that presentation of time changes between these two works. This will not be an open notes essay. Don't want to see windows other than Moodle open when you're writing your answer. Remember that you won't have internet access or notes when you take the actual AP exam, but neither will anybody else. So we looked at this work back in Unit 1, but it's from Mesoamerica, so I'm returning to it as a review. What was its likely function and meaning? What material is it made from? Also, which of our prehistoric works do and do not show stylized animal figures? It's a question you've seen before. We're getting close to the test. Not a bad time to review. Well, this prehistoric work illustrates a concept central to many indigenous American cultures, one that Ms. Jacobs keeps hammering home. To give you a further hint, it starts with the letter D. So what other prehistoric work also shows unusual faces? That is, at least according to the College Board, a similar content. I have some struggles with this question, which you've seen before, but I'm keeping it because it might return. So I'm not going to try to repeat your excellent presentations. This will be a very quick dash through dates and cultures to help you keep the chronology straight and, of course, to introduce the test questions. Chavin de Huantar is one of the only two BCE cultures we're looking at. The other is the Olmecs, and we really only look at that in the context of the Aztecs. The old temple of Chavin de Huantar dates from around 900 BCE, which is later than New Kingdom Egypt, but earlier than archaic Greek culture, just to help you stick it in your timeline. So what was the function or purpose of this complex? This isn't one of your required images, but I think it's helpful. Why was this particular geographic location probably chosen? On the right, we see the anthropomorphic Lanzón Stela with its feline head and human body. We've got the head on the upper left there. It stands at the center of the old temple. So worshipers would encounter it after navigating a labyrinthine maze of tunnels. Imagine seeing it emerge out of the dark. I wasn't able to find a date for the relief sculpture on the bottom left, or any indication of whether it was found in the old or new temple precincts. I did search. I'm just hoping that since the College Board doesn't tell us, they don't expect us to know. But note that here again we see that mixture of human and animal features combined in a complex and really visually confusing style that intermingles figures. And do you remember the term for that? So the image on the upper left is from Chavin de Huantar, although it's not a required work. That's probably the most famous work from that. I don't know why it wasn't included. But note that the image changes when it's flipped upside down, but that there is still a clear image. And again, the images are intermingled in an interesting way. So I flipped a required image as well, just for fun. Contour rivalry is mostly associated with the works of Chavin de Huantar, but it shows up in modern geometric art as well. So the feline on the Lanzón Stela is almost certainly a jaguar, which is a repeated theme in Andean and Mesoamerican art. Here, moving from top left clockwise, you see a jaguar warrior from an Aztec codex, go shamanism, a row of jaguar heads at Chavin de Huantar, and the jaguar throne from the Mayan site of Chichen Itza. So here's what Wikipedia has to say. Quick, agile, and powerful enough to take down the largest prey of the jungle, the jaguar is the largest of the big cats in the Americas and one of the most efficient and aggressive predators. Endowed with a spotted coat and well adapted for the jungle, hunting either in the trees or water makes it one of the felines tolerant, making it one of the few felines tolerant of water. The jaguar remains revered among the indigenous Americans who live closely with it. Kind of a long sentence. All major Mesoamerican civilizations prominently featured a jaguar god, and for many, such as the Olmec and as we see the Aztec, the jaguar was an important part of shamanistic rituals. Does this remind you of any of the other animals we've studied? How about oryx, lions, bulls, Note, too, that birds and dragons share the jaguar's ability to thrive in very different environments. But one other interesting point that the Wikipedia article I just read, or at least that section, doesn't mention, is that jaguars were important in cultures where people didn't live that close to the jaguars. The Aztec culture is in Mexico's highlands, its central plains, but the jaguar imagery and legends past, many people think that the origin of a lot of this religion is actually in the Amazon basin. So we only encounter the Olmec indirectly through the Aztec veneration of this relatively small mask. The big stone faces that you see on the left are actually the most famous of the Olmec artifacts. The Olmec are, however, considered the mother culture of Mesoamerica, much as the Chavin de Huantar are considered the mother culture of Andean cultures. So note the cleft in the mask's head, which is echoed by the two temples at the top of the Templo Mayor, where it held a treasured spot. Another expression of the D word. So what's the mask made of? Where was it found? And what does the Aztec possession of this mask indicate? Yaxchilan was one of many Mayan city-states, notable for its remarkable carved lintels depicting a ceremony. You need to know what ceremony and who was conducting it. So the image on the right is our required work, but the image on the left actually comes earlier in the narrative. What are Lady Shock and her husband, Shield Jaguar, up to in the panel on the left? What does this ceremony represent? In other words, what mythical event does it commemorate? And how does this tie in to power and authority? What does the ritual produce, as seen in our required work on the right? And what work from an earlier unit has a similar theme and content? How are both works typical of Mayan friezes? What do these sculptures usually contain in combination? Hint, what do you see along the top frame and the top left frame of our required work? What are the characteristic features of Yaxchilan's and, for that matter, Mayan architecture? What do these works have in common? And by the way, this is an accept question, so think about what they might have in common. Theories about this work are just that. They're theories. Archaeologists are still squabbling over which culture created this effigy mound, and Native American groups are squabbling over which modern-day tribes can claim descent from and/or affinity with the mound builders. So, what was the likely function of this large, elaborate work? How did it tie in with astronomy? What was not found inside the giant snake earthwork, although they were found nearby? What was the name of the room set aside for ceremonial gatherings? Neither of these pyramids is a required work, but you should be able to identify which one is Mayan and which one is Aztec. This, by the way, was either, I can't remember if it was an enduring understanding or essential knowledge, but it was one of those. What kind of narrative does the stone tell? And what earlier work in our course might tell a similar narrative about a fight among the gods? Why was this temple located where it was? Where was the stone placed on the temple and why? What is the likely purpose of the portion of this work circled in red? What's the significance of this work's materials? What is the significance of this city and of this central building within the city? What animal did the city supposedly represent? So how do we know from the Inca portions of this building on top that it was especially important? I have included a huge hint. What else originally indicated the building's importance and got those conquistadors really excited? What Inca architectural conventions do these walls employ? Hint, you need to know what the term ashlar masonry means, and you should note the shape of the stones. Okay, what do the materials and technique of both works signal about their purpose and about the Inca culture? What does the wide variety of patterns in the tunic signal about the wearer? What was the presumed function of the stone on the bottom left? What work from an earlier unit had a similar function to the central and featured work in this photo? What materials are used in this work, and how did the artists acquire these materials? What was the work modeled on? How was this work experienced? Did it make any kind of music? And that's a big hint, since I didn't think the question I'm referencing was entirely fair. What earlier work from our course is also painted on this kind of material, that is, on animal skin? That's kind of a tricky one. Look it up. What technique did the artist use in addition to freehand painting? If it didn't come up in your presentations, it's discussed in the Khan Academy essay. I'm making this podcast before this presentations are up on our Google Drive. Why was this subject matter chosen? How is the work organized visually? What do these works have in common? By the way, there are several answers, another except question, but I'm going to give you a hint. One correct answer involves the long arm of the law. What were the artists trying to accomplish for their own culture with this work, and why? What had happened to the Puebloan pottery tradition? What work from an earlier unit was produced using a somewhat similar technique? How did the artists reference the ancient Puebloan past? I'm going to give you a hint because I thought this was another tricky question. Think about the technique that the Martinez's developed, not just the images that they used. Note also, by the way, that the images are abstract. That's a lot of hints for that question since I think it's a hard one. Okay, these two works were paired together in a set of image-based questions. And you've already seen the ones that have to do with the work on the left, but they show up again on this test. Again, we're getting closer to the AP exam, and I'm taking the opportunity to review. So it wouldn't hurt to review how and why the works on the left were made, what earlier works probably inspired their designs, and what the inscription on them did and did not say. What do these works have in common? Hint, think of the functions they served and did not serve. Why was this work created? Why so many splashes of red? Why are the figures, what are the figures hanging from the clothesline on top, and what do they represent? And now we move toward the 20th century and the home stretch.